Right. Thanks, everyone. Hey, Anna. Hi, Anne. Thanks for coming.
Hey guys.
Right. So I think we're just gonna start now. So this is going to be one part updates, one part discussion. So the discussion will be about trust in the network, and because soon after this, I think right after the new year, we will be doing a lot of push. And as you can see, like I think last week we were just 400, and now we're like getting 40 more volunteers. So I think there's the speed and momentum already in place, and like we have been talking to a lot of really amazing partners here and abroad. So just to give you some update, so the discussion later is more about that. At the base of this scaling, right? It has to be founded by trust, and like how do we set those or operate or maybe like find ways to cultivate it within the network and outside. But first, Joe. So this week we have had a lot of updates. I think Joe, I would love you to talk about what you've been up to in terms of the partner onboarding and all that stuff that you were talking about in the board meeting.
Absolutely, absolutely. As I'm sure you all are aware by now, I've been focusing primarily on the operational side of things. I've been for the 5 months or so that I've been with ProgCode, I've been continually passionate about that side, and especially about onboarding. I always see it as the single most important component, well, at least the single most initial important component in keeping volunteers engaged, enabling them to contribute, making this very simple for people to take action. There's obviously been a lot of interest in the community, and it's the idea is how do we take that interest and put it to something productive and something that helps benefit everybody that we support. The specific things that we're looking at right now, and we'll actually have a call immediately following this and would certainly encourage everybody to join, is how we take onboarding to the next step, thinking specifically about community onboarding, the people in ProgCode in general, volunteer onboarding, so as people move from the community perspective into a getting things done perspective, specifically with the ProgCode core team, and also partner onboarding. And then I think for that, there's also an element of how do you connect the community members to partners. A lot of these are, especially the partner side, those are learnings that we would love to take and apply and offer to different partners and new apps and solutions and whatever it may be joining the network, just making it as easy as possible for them to be successful. It's been really interesting. Preston on the call, Anna, Rabia, of course, where there's a ton of great conversation going on. There's a lot that we sort of have as things that we would like to do, and now it's just a matter of taking those things and putting them together in an organized way so that we know what one another's working on. We're working on high priority things. We're being able to be as collaborative as possible, transparent, and not duplicating effort. And so we'll certainly, obviously, we've been seeing continual changes and continual improvements in the network, and this is something that we should expect for quite some time. And so, yeah, I'm very, very excited about that, and would certainly encourage everybody to reach out, come join operations, come join the call, whatever it may be, if you're interested as well, or even if you're interested in taking those learnings and applying it to what you're working on, potentially even outside of ProgCode.
And so one thing that we also would like to point out is that we have now made public the operations channel, so that we believe that there are some stuff that would help a lot of people get their feet wet in terms of just watching how we operate, and having that kind of public channel for operations really helps, I think, in terms of encouraging people. Another, I think, a key update, and I would love to like if you could just give us a glimpse of what you've been working on, Preston, about, and the new onboarding. Would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, no, definitely, sure. So, this past onboarding session was my first stab, if you will, at the presentation. I learned a lot after doing it, working with Joe, all kind of, and Rafi too, kind of taking that presentation and maybe changing it a little bit to get more, I guess, more pertinent information to maybe new people to the community, new people to the team, and making it also maybe a little bit more visually pleasing. Not that Joe hasn't done a great job, but we're going to try to implement maybe some like the new slides, templates that I put together to see what we can do. Also working with Rapi on, we have a huge list of people that have I guess applied or signed up. So I guess applied is a better word, to join the group on kind of making sure that we're getting the right people, a part of the the community, and not angry trolls, if you will. But besides that, this past week we worked on, and I think we made some decisions on the Medium blog. On making that a little bit more relevant, and adding, like, for example, little things like tabs at the beginning, and trying to get some information out that way. Again, comes back to transparency. Everything we do, you can find anywhere, which is nice, because you don't have to sit there and go through an hour's worth of Slack things. You can go and read the updates. You can go and watch the recordings and see what you missed. Other than that, just kind of working with the onboarding team and Joe on making sure that we can get this process streamlined. And I definitely encourage everybody to, if you haven't joined an onboarding call or an onboarding session, or even if you have, join the next one. I think you'll see some awesome updates and improvements. And if you have any suggestions, or if there's any information that you wish that you would have known during, at the beginning that you know now, let us know. That way we can definitely get that integrated into that presentation. So, yeah.
Thank you, Preston. And last, I think I would like to hear Anna and her dog about if you could give us some updates from Social Roots.
Sure. Can you guys hear me okay without headphones?
Yeah.
Yep.
I feel like Dr. Evil here. So Social Roots, we are chugging along. It's a lot of onboarding new people, which is actually really wonderful. So Preston has been helping us a lot with setting up some webinars. So like we're going to be doing customer kind of webinars about lessons learned and like things that other activists want to talk about, some of the tools that they're using, or what best practices are. So that'll start in January. And that's actually something I wanted to talk to you guys about too in ProgCode, because we could potentially team up for that. Like we could do like, sort of mention like ProgCode through that as well, so that we can talk about the larger community and the network. And I know that there's a lot of people who are like sort of in various different things, and ProgCode is sort of this hub. So like it just kind of occurred to me that's something you guys, or we in ProgCode, might want to be a part of, because I know that's something that you guys talked about, and it seems like if we don't have to duplicate efforts, then great.
Yep.
The other thing is like Erica has been sort of collaborating with us, because I know she's doing a lot with Project Swimmy, so we're trying to make sure we're working together and that we're supporting their efforts and making sure that like anything we're building is sort of in coordination with whatever they're planning, or collaborating where it makes sense.
Awesome.
Talk to Bernie Phone Bank, or I should say Grassroots Phone Bank guys. We sort of have some tentative plans to integrate at some point, potentially. And then there's a lot of people talking about events tools in Project Swimmy and then outside. So I've been making those connections to make sure that they're all aware of each other, so that if and when it becomes a project, they can not have duplicate efforts, right? And that's actually a question I have for you guys, is like, I'm noticing there's a ton of these projects popping up, and I know that there's sort of these efforts in terms of partner relationships and also project lists that we're implementing to make sure that people are collaborating. Like, what of that should we be aware of, like in terms of directing people to these project lists, and what's the one like true source of truth, and how how far have we come in that regards right now?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, and I think the strategy that we're working on for winter, and I would love to talk to you more about that. That like goes to that effect wherein where like we want to increase the confidence on the network at the same time. Like, how do you go about that? It's more on increased coordination, increased communications, and like I feel like there's this constant like sequences or like things that you have to do in order for you to achieve that. So I think yeah, I'm really looking forward to our meeting on Sunday because there's just so much ideas. And to continue on what you're saying.
But there are things in place right now, right? So I saw the partnership channel.
Yeah.
Like the project sign up form and stuff.
So it's more on like setting up the base for that as well. Like, and we want to have that kind of access to people, like provide those services to different partners so that they could see the other possible projects that they could partner up with. And that's one of the main goals we have for the next season, which is we want to have like higher engagement between those partners and those partners to the volunteers. And I think there's like a lot of levers that we can use in order to stimulate that kind of interaction. Just to add as well from what you're saying, are you done with your? Okay.
Yeah, that was
okay. So also there was this new group called actiongroups.net that connected with Erica and I, and like we talked to them this afternoon, and there's just like the goals are the same, and like that's the constant thing that we're seeing. Like there are a lot of people who are seeing things from the ground up, and that's where the groups are focused right now, which is like really local community organizing. So it's very interesting to see this moving forward. So I think that opens up this discussion on trust because it's more about just the first question I think is, and this discussion, if you want to talk, please type in stack in the chat area, and I'll just provide like a framework of, and whoever comes first, like I will call on you. Depending, your hands are ready now, and I can see. No. And it's more a discussion about the network itself, because so just a background before we start the discussion is that we formatted or we created this network knowing that the center or like the community will revolve around the applications that we're hosting. So in order for us to do that, that structure of where is the core ProgCode, like I feel like the problem here is that the core in itself has no coordination, and like how can you have an effective communication channels between the core and the other community leaders or influencers, which are the applications. So I'm kind of nervous, or I'm kind of like just trying to get my bearings here. But if you have any like comments, or how do you see the network as, or where do you see the network should go, please type in stack. Because so I'll just talk until like someone else talks stack. Okay. So in terms of like this idea where the network should be, and how can the network be more sustainable in terms of its structure? Because right now we have new people coming in, and a huge issue of it is trust. And like, how can you cultivate it? Is it really trust, or is it just sustainability because of shared goals? Or like, I would love to hear your thoughts about this concept. So Anna, can I would love you to start.
Well, I mean, I just wanted to raise a question to the group. What are the challenges we're facing right now? Like, I certainly know that it's really tough to keep up with chat, like it's really tough to be coordinated. And we've sort of had some efforts to have Trello and Airtable and things like that in order to make up. I'm just wondering, like, what other challenges are we seeing from what's happening right now?
Because if anyone wants to jump in, please do so. And that's the thing, right? Like, because there's no coordination or no communication, proper communication. I think there's this huge challenge of trust, maybe, or like just not knowing who to go to or where to go to. Like, there's this confusion happening, and it breaks down the structure of the network. And I would love to hear your thoughts on this too.
Hey guys, this is Ann Lewis from Move On. We're thinking a lot about this too. So you asked a couple questions here. One is like, how do external groups view ProgCoders, and what exactly are people trying to do when they join? And from my perspective, like, we see ProgCoders as this like amazing community that was created around energy to support Bernie, but then it's grown into something bigger than that and has all this momentum and potential. And it's great that it's like a distributed, decentralized thing. And it's also, it kind of like is an example of this idea that we hope to be true, that there's a lot of like progressive energy that wants to fight Trump and that wants to bring ideas from Bernie's campaign into American politics in ways that are possible right now. So it's viewed as like this positive but nebulous thing. In terms of like what people want to do when they show up, I think a lot of like we want to help. We want to collaborate with other groups on open source projects. In particular, we don't have a good event management system. Every time we run days of action, we like curse the event management system that we're currently using, and lived with it through the election, and have a big long list of things that we would theoretically want. So like, we know internally we want to either build ourselves or with collaborators a new event system, and we're just trying to figure out like what are the steps for getting that off the ground. So then like there's this question of like, well, if you have a project idea, how do you get collaborators to join you? That's a good problem to have. I think that's a problem you can bring directly to this network, and then if anyone's interested or anybody has similar needs, they can just pile onto your project. But like the hard prerequisite step is like product management, I guess, where you have to come up with a list of requirements that developers can just pile onto. So like for that to even be something you can like write down before you can start coding to these specs, you need like some clear idea of what workflows you want, because at least in our world, code doesn't get used and doesn't matter unless it maps to a campaign or workflow that they'll use and you can train them on and make sense. So you need to know the workflows, and then you need to know how workflows map into an actual like software system, and like, just enough to be able to say like, hey, we need some rough concept of this data model and then these features. And mapping that out like takes a lot of time, and it's kind of hard, although it's something that we do all the time for the projects that we build. And so like when I'm thinking through like, okay, like Move On's needs for an event system and trying to collaborate, I'm realizing that like if I were to write down a list of features that describe a system that we could use, we're basically just like serializing our workflows and saying, hey, work on this project with us, but implied in that is this idea that we would have the same workflows. So that's the part where I get stuck, because it's like, I don't want to be pushing our workflows onto other people. I'm not sure how to collaborate with other people and like how to sync up our workflows. One problem we've run into in the past when we've tried to collaborate with allies, not in this network, but in the open network of progressive tech orgs around the world, is that unless we are building towards shared workflows and all parties have some date at which they think they could start using these workflows internally, projects kind of like just drift and diverge, and people only build to their use cases, then it's really hard to generalize two separate code bases that do sort of the same thing into a single code base that's useful for both parties. So I guess I'm thinking that it might be helpful to figure out some way, and I don't have any idea how to do this, I'd love to hear other people's thoughts, of like building to workflows, but coming up with the idea of which workflows to build for in a collaborative way that can, is something that can be done by this community.
Right. Joe, do you want to continue that?
Absolutely, yeah. So the first thing, I think my perspective, the Trump one's obviously really interesting, and the way that I'm looking at it in general is however we can influence is the word I'd love to use, and influence Trump and his actions that he has, and really promote like what are the things that the 90, 95, 99% of people really care about and can benefit from. I think, Anne, and it's awesome seeing you again. Awesome having you on the call. It's amazing just the work that Move On is doing. It's really great to get your background and your perspective on everything. I would absolutely love to just review the list of the goals that you have and the things that you think, because I would expect that there's probably a ton in common and a ton of really mutually beneficial shared things. And wherever we can find those, that's, I think, where this whole movement is most successful. On the, you're absolutely right. It's quite challenging for providing that one size fits all solution. And the way that we've talked about that so far is what we'd ultimately like to get to. And Rapi, if you want to jump in or anything, but what we'd ultimately love to get to is having a very modular type of development where we have a lot of flexibility in the things that we create. There's just very easy ways to plug in place and add features and use those features from a bunch of different applications, similar to the whole microservice phenomenon that's out there. I think the one project in particular, Project Swimmy, the way that we've been talking about that one, it's a map-based issue engagement system. It's a social thing, but the overall strategy there is keeping it very benign, very basic up front in what it can do, and allowing a lot of customizability in the back end. But the reason I mention that in particular is because it will be an event-based system up front. And so I think that could be really interesting. Would love to hear your thoughts on like the sort of needs, because I think that could help kind of as we move that down the road, where that could go. One other thing that I think we look at quite a bit is with the shared workflows, wherever we can provide the baseline for people and allow people to adapt and evolve accordingly. And I think one like good example is like Political Revolution. Like they're working on the same sort of thing, the onboarding side of stuff, and it's really cool being able to say, hey, here's what we do, here's what we have, all of our documents they're out there, they're pinned to the channels, anyone can find them, it's all visible. But it allows people to say, oh, actually that's what we're thinking, and 80% of this works for us, and the other 20% is a little bit different. But at least that way then it allows for some shared efficiencies in what we do.
Okay, Stephen.
There we go. Thanks. I just wondering, your point of clarification, this issue of trust, is it a matter of trust between ProgCode and other groups, trust within ProgCode? Is it new members?
It's more about like just knowing how to work together, right? And like how to interact with each other within the network and outside. I think there's like this, like one of the good things here is that we come in with good intentions, and then like until it's not, right? I think that's generally how we all operate right now. And I feel that in terms of communication, collaboration, coordination, all of those things that make an organization work, since we are a network of various goals and aspirations, like all these applications have their different goals. How do we go about cultivating that, or like what are the processes, or like what are the things that we need to do to create that kind of trust? One good example, I think, is that this research that we did before in terms of the Wikipedia creators and how they were able to vote for administrators. Because in Wikipedia, you don't really, you become an editor if you're voted into one. So we studied who became the super users and who did not. And it turns out like the more you contributed to the editing or to maintaining Wikipedia, the more chances you have into winning an election. So it more becomes now like a substantial input of social capital, like of the actions that you infer into the community at large. And I feel like in that sense, it's a very monolithic structure. So that's what I'm trying to get in here. Like, how does that translate? Or how can we translate trust in this community? I think. So do you have something else to say, Stephen?
Well, I'm just curious. The example you gave about Wikipedia, was it simply one of quantity, or was quality of participation also reviewed in?
It's mostly quantity. really a lot of like items here.
Yeah, I mean, there's this saying, the loudest mouth always prevails. And so you can end up with people who have a great deal of time on their hands, have nothing else to do. The thing that always happens in condo associations, where the person who's retired or unemployed and always next to grind walks around all the time complaining about things and ends up getting on the board, eventually ends up becoming the board president, and nobody likes what the person does because the person has nothing else to do but go around and do that. And then, that's where I see a trust issue when you look simply at the fact that a person is participating a lot. We had this in Connect with Bernie. We haven't really had too much of a problem in our current Slack group, you should believe in, but we did have a couple of situations where people that we brought over from Connect with Bernie, it wasn't their fault, but they were taken advantage of by other people that they knew in other Slack groups. We've got a great set of graphic artists in our group. One of them just joined. Julie Bamboo is in ProgCode now, and we've just got a channel where we make a proposal. We say, look, we'd like to get some art in this realm, with this kind of a message, etc. And our artists just go to work, and nobody gives it a second thought. They come up with a bunch of work, put it in the channel, and everybody grabs it and then puts it out on Twitter, Facebook, etc. And then we found out that somebody had gone to one of our people and said, oh, look, I could really use this, where I can get it, knowing full well where all the artists were. And we found ourselves making art for somebody whose interests were not exactly aligned with the purposes of our group.
Right.
And again, how do you stop that?
What happened to that relationship?
What you mean with the person inside the group? We simply talked with the person and let them know that they need to be a little bit more careful when they bring in graphics requests. And we explained, and then the person knew a little bit about the friction and really didn't know that he was being taken advantage of by somebody else. And again, one of these situations where people were very trusting and assumed that everybody else was being honest. And I mean, it's kind of hard to set some rules regarding that, because you want to be open, you want to be receptive to all schools of thought, as long as it's in the vein of being progressive. And arguably this was, but we also knew, because of who looked for the artwork, where it was going. So
right. And okay, thank you, Stephen. And I just wanted to pick up on what Anne said a while ago about figuring out how to build a defense or something like that. Like, I feel like moving forward with this discussion, it's more about one part of it is having a trust within the members of the network. Another is having the trust in the network itself. And I feel like that's where progressive coders right now, as you said, like, it has a potential of really shining. What we see is like we have become a prepared safety net for all the problems that tech problems that the progressive movement has been facing. I think when there was some issues with the code access pipeline in terms of the communication, they ran to us, and almost instantly after 2 days, they already created like solutions to help out the tech warriors on the ground. When the Women's March was looking for tech support, I think people were ready to jump on board and just help them in terms of what they need in terms of tech. And I know that they have a meeting now on Saturday, to discuss further how to completely like push it out. And I feel like that's a theme that we're seeing. And I like more and more we move forward with this, I think it just establishes the trust that the progressive movement at large has towards the network, the progressive coders network. So it's something that to be seen. Anna, do you want to pick it up, or do you have more something you want to say?
Yeah, it's really tough because we're tackling a lot of different issues at the same time, and we're pretty limited in resources. It's like we have a lot of members, and then we have some board members and some like sort of administrative sort of roles, but really it's been like, as far as I can tell, like just a few people that have really done most of the work. It's like we almost have to pick our battles and try to figure out what we can realistically tackle and what things we really like need to do right away. So I don't have an answer. I'm just kind of like noticing that, and it's not clear to me exactly what the problem is right now. Like there's like a lot of different things that need improvement, but it's not clear to me what the biggest pain points really are.
Right.
To try about solving them. And to kind of Anne's earlier comment about product management, kind of like, I think that's a really good point. And like, I think we're really seriously lacking product owner roles. Like we have a lot of people who are developers, and we have a lot of people who are kind of ideas creators. But that piece of it where you take all those ideas and then you figure out what things overlap and what things don't is definitely something we're missing. And for whatever reason, we haven't really attracted a lot of that role of people. And to your point, Anne, about like even events management, that tool, right? So like when you're building an events tool, there's like 3 different disparate uses. I need to manage events for my court organization. I need to manage events that are public events that I can post and other people can post, and this is like ground control, right? What Bernie had. And then there's like, I need to manage events across organizations. So it's not like everyone has to post to my website, but everyone's events sort of show up in one place and we coordinate somehow. And I like when we talk about events management, it's like for organization like MoveOn.org, is that, and I'm not necessarily asking you to explain it, but I'm just saying like what MoveOn.org might need is like more for like a really large organization, like a tool, versus for like what an activist community might need might be more like a united database that then like, because like the permissions become tricky. It's like if you're an organization, you want to have to approve the events, but if you're like an activist disparate groups, you don't have one coordinate body approving everything. So it's just like a database of stuff, and that has to be that way to some extent.
Right.
So like it's almost like you have to come together and just like make that.
I think if I understand correctly,
but like if you don't have that role, right, the product owner who like comes in and or even someone acting in that role to really like pick it apart and tease it apart and figure out where it overlaps or it doesn't and how much it makes sense to work together, it's really tough to work together. And not all every project is going to necessarily overlap. And there's lots of like out of every 10 discussions I have, one of them fits, right? It's just kind of the nature of.
And do you want to pick it up?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, everything you've said there is true. I'm not really sure what the solution is either.
Well, just to be clear, so for that particular thing, I think the solution is just to have those conversations, right? So the solution is to make sure that everyone involved in that idea, who's interested in that idea, simply has an opportunity to know about each other and have that conversation and then decide wherever they decide. And it seems like, so that's a really obvious pain point that ProgCode can help solve. But in terms of like, there's like also like 10 other pain points that I'm not really sure what to do. And the how we solve that, like so far right now, I've been mostly just trying to make sure people are connected, but I've been doing that manually, right? So like, should there just be like a master list of projects that we like force everyone to look at every time they talk to us? Like, there's some sort of like coordination that needs to happen, or like do we like assign someone to go and talk to every group and like reach out to every group and like.
Sorry if I'm stacking out of turn here, but one idea we were kicking around is having a like GitHub project that would be like an RFC list where people could post ideas as pull requests or look at ideas that we have posted or other people have posted as a way of like managing that like list of ideas. It's kind of a tech-centric way of thinking about it because it's on GitHub, but it seems like it's worked pretty well for the Rust community. Here's an example that we were looking at and thinking about trying to emulate. So that's do you guys have like a system like that for managing ideas already, or you do a couple different disparate systems? Like, how are you thinking about that?
So that's what you said reminds me a lot of how Chai Hack Night does their weekly presentation of projects as well. Like they put all their ideas and projects in the GitHub issues area, and they tagged it there so people would just see the projects and comment in whichever thing they want. Right now, at the moment, so we don't have that kind of process right now because we are more focused on the people aspect of it, which I wanted to just invoke those two. So what I'm hearing a lot about here is there's somewhat needs, like there's a deficiency on trust on the process, I feel. And I think that because in terms of process, in terms of like communication, coordination, I think that's the pain point that I feel is happening, because a lot of things are happening within the ProgCode staffers, and they're all like going wherever they want to go, but there has to be a way for them to connect projects with each other. Another is that there has to be a way for us to just cultivate that peer-to-peer system or like environment wherein the team leaders themselves will be very much incentivized or encouraged to talk to each other and therefore find ways to collaborate. But as a master list, I think that's a good solution. And yeah, I think there's just like having that information out there, just like the list or like from Chai Hack Night would be so helpful. And I'm hoping that Code Core will really provide that kind of solution for us moving forward.
Hold on, but there is that, right, Joe? Like we have a few different places we have project lists. Is it a matter of enforcing that?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we're definitely looking at, and Dan's been working on the infrastructural side of making sure all projects go into that project list, making sure that the skills that we have are consistent with Code Corps, what they're looking for, making sure that people submit new projects to the list, even in the idea phase, just so that we have visibility and have understanding. So yeah, that's sort of the interim step, and then I think long term the goal is having Code Corps sort of being that place that would house all that information.
Yeah. So and just to add into that as well, like more so in the terms of avenues wherein we keep on looking for ways wherein the project managers or project leaders themselves would reach out to the volunteers the same way that the volunteers will reach out to the app leaders. So I think it's more on just having all bases covered, but at the same time make it as clear and coordinative as much as possible so that there's this trust within that kind of process. Does anyone my eyes are okay. Preston, do you want to say something?
And correct me if I'm wrong, I think this is something that Robbie, you and I kind of touched base on a little bit earlier this afternoon in Slack, as far as connecting with the project leaders or project managers, having, whether it's me or whoever, having that one person like once a week checking in with them, and keeping a database, or whether it's a Google Doc or Airtable or whatever. That way we know currently, like for example, Social Roots, we need React developers, okay? So we know exactly what they need with also the list of people who are coming in, and the new people. And then that way, whenever we see, okay, so we have a whole bunch of React developers that are coming in, or per se or whatever, we can say, oh, you know what? And in the introduction, hey guys, why don't you guys, welcome to the team. Why don't you guys check out Social Roots? I know that they're in need of React developers, or this person, this project, and this project is in need of that. But having that one, like I think it was said before, a liaison per se, that one person that does the check. And I think maybe VG, that was kind of a part of what they were going to do too with the partner check-in. with just checking in with them once a week or so and saying, hey, what's the status of your project? Any new updates? Something like that, and then coming and getting back to the core team and kind of going from there.
Yeah, that touches a really nice point, and I think this would be our last few discussions. It's more on again building relationship and building that kind of strong bond between Progressive Coders Network and those applications. I feel like that personal touch of just talking to them and just asking them how's everything, and not ask them to fill out a form to add more to their tasks, adds into that kind of relationship building that I really am keen on, because they are the center of our community. Like without them, we're essentially nothing, right? So having that kind of, hey, we got your back, like constant communication, constant relationship building, builds that kind of strong bond and trust between us and the application partners themselves. So I think that's how we have been going about that for quite some time. And I think moving forward, we need to really create a team wherein it's not just me or VG and Ligway who reaches out to them. So yeah, and it's I think we've covered all the bases here now. I think there's this good discussion about the trust within the network, the trust of the progressive movement and Progressive Coders Network, and our trust within each other, like as the application leaders and Progressive Coders themselves. So it's 9:15. Does anyone have one last thought to share? Josh, do you want to say something, or Oleg? I haven't heard your voices. I miss it.
Good. I was just typing in the chat room.
Oh, okay. Oleg, do you have any thoughts?
No, I think you guys pretty much said everything needs to be said. I think a lot of the stuff's touching upon, streamlining the operations for actually coding all these things. Code course can take care of a lot of that. So I see more as how do we engage the community to know what's going on, and that's where we need to set a set of processes. And I'm sure the conversation is the first step to developing the processes. I think someone else brought up a good point, and we should get a list together of all the pain points. We can start tackling one by one and stay organized that way.
Awesome. Okay, thank you, everyone. I think this was a great discussion. This was our first time, and it really is a nice little discussion we had here. I think this is definitely going to be part of our consideration in terms of building the strategy, which is one of the things we really want to maximize is overall trust with Progressive Coders Network. And I think that's how we put our stake on the ground within the whole moment that we have right now. So thank you. Have a good night, and bye.
Thanks, everybody. And I'm posting a link to the operations call if anybody wants to continue that conversation.
Oh, Tino, I haven't heard your voice. Oh, I heard your voice just now.
I do have one thing to say.
Go ahead.
I wasn't too sure where the trust dilemma was. Was it between the new users, or is it between the project managers? Because if it's between the users, I do have a suggestion. Otherwise, I don't. Not yet.
No, it's more about. I would love to hear your whatever you're about to say, but it's more about discussion on the nature of trust and the network.
Okay.
But yeah, what's in your mind?
This has been on my mind since I started with you guys. The first time I signed up, I think there should have been a period between maybe 24 hours, maybe 14 hours. Someone reached out to me and said, hey, what are your skills? What are you looking to do? Exactly the same interview I had with you guys the first time, but it happened 3 days later. I think that would have been perfect to discuss with either Joe or you or anybody else. Just not jot it down someplace, reach out to the right person and say, hey, I think I have the perfect person for you in mind. This person's interested in this, and this is their skill sets. And that's what I have to say.
Sounds like the making of an onboarding, buddy. You gonna join the call too?
I am going to join the call, yeah.
Good deal.
That's awesome. Okay, thanks everyone.
All right, talk to y'all.